Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Lightspeed webinar series. My name is Stephanie. I'll be around for the duration of the webinar. If you guys have any questions, I'll be able to facilitate those. We are going to save those questions to the end, so if you'd like to ask our host anything during the presentation, please feel free to submit those as we go along. We can just use the questions box to the right-hand side of your screen and click on that button to type. Our host today is Jason Hall, another one of our awesome Agilists, and he's going to be presenting on team facilitation, fittingly titled, "Something's Awry with My Team. What's next?" So remember to submit those questions as we go along here, and we'll have that live Q&A when we close. And with that, I believe we're ready to get going here. So over to you, Jason.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking the time out of your Friday on this gorgeous day, depending on where you're connecting from, to come here about team facilitation, right, from anyone's perspective. And actually, if you notice, you're looking at the screen right now, I changed the title to "Something's Awry with My Blank" because I believe you can actually extend this to beyond just a team. All right, so let's get started. First, oops, there we go. So a little about me, right? So my name is Jason Hall. I'm an Agile consultant, trainer, coach, organizational humorist, et cetera, with Lightspeed, 15 years of IT experience, and 6 years as a coach. I started as a product owner and was one of the first coaches of the Agile Center of Excellence for Booz Allen Hamilton, and learned a lot in those 6 years from working with many different teams in the federal sector, on the in the nonprofit, and in the private sector. So I'm here today to share some of that experience. And yes, while I may be a coach, I truly believe these set of techniques and this framework can be done by anyone on a team. You don't have to be a coach, or you don't have to be a scrum master. That of course helps. All right, so to kick things off, we are going to start. Whoops. We're going to start with a poll. So for those of you online who have never used Poll Anywhere, Poll EV, Poll Everywhere, excuse me, it's a really simple tool. You just need to pull out your phone or web device, or just use your computer. If you would, I would like to hear from everyone here. Why are you here? Why are you taking your lunchtime out of here? So all you need to do is just on your web browser, type in pollev.com/JasonH245, and you'll see it come up, and then you can enter in whatever you want, and responses will magically appear. So we're going to use this technique throughout the. We'll use this tool throughout the presentation today. All right. So let's take a couple seconds, about a minute, and just see what comes up. Wrong. I like that. What's team wrong? Is that? I think that was those two separate topics. All right. Interesting. Sure. Sounded. Topic something, learning. All right. Leadership. All right, now we're starting to come in. Disruption. Golf and gold. I can assure you there will be no golf or no gold coming up during this conversation. All right. Leadership. What else do we have? All right. So it seems like the strongest answer so far is learning. All right, this is great. So hopefully you'll get to, it says what other ones are going to come in. Excellent changes. I can assure you there will be changes. Whether they are excellent or not is up to debate. All right, team help. All right, great. All right, so kicking off, right? If this is your situation, it can be pretty easy to tell that something needs to be done, right? You don't need a coach to tell you hey, things are kind of jacked up here. I think we need to focus. And I'm willing to bet that at some point in your careers, you all have probably been in one or more of these situations, but I would posit that's probably not the norm. In reality, most likely for the vast majority of us, the situation is usually the status quo. This is kind of Bob's Burgers, right? To me, if I Google status quo images, this is really what pops up in my mind, right? For the vast majority of teams, this is kind of their natural state. So it can be a tad difficult to engage in any type of improvement dialogue when this is your state, when things are kind of running or kind of working, maybe they could be better, right? To really kind of push the question and really ask, could we be better, right? Could we be better? And when I say we, this is part of the reason why I took the word team out of the presentation. Really, it's not just a team. It really is. It could be a collective group of folks, a project, people working on a project, people that work, on within an office or with a division, but that share some common bound, right? So whether you are formally classified as a team or not, fundamentally, if you're working together with a group of people, even if it's not stable, it's not consistent, right? This question is going to come up, right? Could we be better? Right? So that's what I mean. All right. So, and assuming that this question comes up, yeah, you recognize a problem, right? You might recognize one or many problems. So then the next thought would be that will pop in your head, right? Is, well, what to do? What do I do? Right? I'm seeing a couple things that we could improve on, but which path do I take? And I like to think of sort of these, there are really four personas, and I've shown three up on here, of the types of responses that people typically have when they encounter an issue. Right? There's the fix it Felix approach. For many of you with kids, you'll get this reference. It's from Wreck-It Ralph. But it's, hey, I can fix it, right? Presupposes you know what's wrong, how to fix it, and that everyone else is on board. You just kind of take out your golden hammer. Ah, it is gold. There we go. So whoever put gold in the title, there you go. You've gotten your gold reference. So it presupposes everybody's on board, and then I can fix this issue. Great, have at it. There's probably what maybe the vast majority of, maybe not the vast majority, second majority of folks might tend to take is the escalate issue. Hey, I've noticed something. It's not my problem. I don't want to deal with it. I'll escalate it to my manager, and I'll escalate it to someone else outside the team, a dev lead, et cetera, et cetera. Or this is probably the vast majority approach. Maybe there's just the droopy McPoodle stance of, hey, it's working great, it's fine, let's just carry on. Or I posit a fourth persona, right? And that's one of, let's actually bring the team in and let's explore this problem together. All right, so before I kind of find out which one of the natural states that you guys and gals fall into, I will say that, speaking kind of humbly, I probably fall off the bat into the fix it Felix approach, right? It's a learned condition for me to kind of get out of that stance, right? And it didn't come easy. All right, so I've shared some humbleness with you. Now, again, let's hear from you. When you encounter problems, what's your natural disposition? Where do you tend to go? Type in your votes. All right. He's winning. Fix it, Felix. Wow, no one for the Escalade so far, huh? They still coming in? All right, so this looks like it's kind of stabilizing out. So it looks like we have Fix It Felix leading the way, followed with Exploring the Problem Together, and coming up last, the Droopy McPoodle stance of, hey, let's just ride this puppy out. All right, so that's great. Then I think you'll definitely find this advice, and I think you'll find this approach beneficial. And the approach I'm talking about, right, is a self-assessment approach. And one of the reasons why it works, especially if you're the Fix It Felix type, right, is that you can actually build an alliance from the beginning with your team, and it disarms the team because it doesn't presuppose that you know all the problems, let alone all the solutions, right? And if you're the type of person that has a tendency to fall into that category, chances are everyone else knows it, right? And that can be off-putting to team members when you're suggesting something. So having a self-assessment approach and then a walkthrough of a self-assessment can actually help to gain that trust with the team. And it allows the team to actually explore those problems together and make through transparency and openness. All right. So when I say self-assessment, what am I talking about? Right. So I'm talking essentially about really. There's many different methods or ways to administer a self-assessment, but one that I tend to use and I've used before is just a common survey. Right. Design a survey to give out to your teams to allow them the chance to respond anonymously to start. And to do that, there are many different survey templates and tools out there. A SurveyMonkey, Survey Gizmo, the one with the alien-looking creatures in the bottom left is Planet Survey. Very simple and easy, and for the most part, depending on how you're using it, free to use. Right, so that's an easy part. Great, thanks. You told me to use a survey. That doesn't really help. So that's step one. Step two is actually, well, how would I even begin about constructing this self-assessment survey, right? And I'd like to offer, here's a couple simple tips, right? When you look at, well, what am I going to assess the team on? And I'll just go with kind of what I've used in the past. And as recently as yesterday, believe it or not, I ran one of these through with one of my teams. So some simple tips when administering a self-assessment, when creating it, right? Rating scales, I think, are good. You know, like you see here on the right here, true, more true than false, more false than true, false, etc. Right? Avoid bimodal responses, like something either is or it isn't. Don't clump concepts together. Right? Say you want to see how your team believes they are doing with continuous integration, continuous development, or continuous deployment, and test-driven development. Right? Those are different techniques and practices, and those are different things. So separate those out. And even though I just said it in my example, try to avoid agile jargon. And so the reason I've done this, I don't know where you are with your teams, but a lot of times I've used this technique or method to go into a new team. I've used it on existing teams. But specifically, if I'm trying to have an open and honest dialogue with the team, and I don't know whether or not I don't know what their baseline level of knowledge is, right? So saying things like we hold sprint planning sessions like all the time isn't necessarily a good question for two reasons. Is one, A, because you got your agile jargon, but B, I think it misses the point about what sprint planning is. So instead, right, yeah, measuring practices are good, and I would say they're right at the smaller level of things you want to measure. But trying to create a survey and design questions that get at the values, the agile values, in general, team building values are much better, right? So we have a backlog. We prioritize user stories. We hold sprint planning sessions like all the time. Probably not the best responses. Instead, what about, hey, every team member's voice is heard when planning and sizing work, right? That gets at the full collaboration and full participation aspect of agile practices. The business focuses on what gets built, while team members responsible for doing the work determine how to build it, right? That gets at the invest principle or criteria of user stories, right? Independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, size appropriately to, without actually putting forward that type of agile jargon, and gets at the fundamental concept that we're trying to measure. All right. So if you've noticed already, well, these are statements that you have here, and they are, right? Let me go back real quick. So I tend to, I preferred a structure that used affirmation statements, right? So it already starts with the best case, and there's many different examples. I know I'll talk about Spotify's health check assessment a little bit later, right? They use essentially happy face, sad face, medium face, and then descriptions about what those mean to measure their level of engagement, or to measure their progress or efficiency, productivity, et cetera, et cetera. So I tend to prefer positive affirmation. People can opt into how true they feel that statement is to them, right? So essentially is, what is your definition of awesome? All right, so while I've pulled many of these from prior experience from the agile principles and practices, and even, right, more and more modern agile principles or practices. What you use, I think, can be a combination of, there's a number of different ways you can kind of come up with what you want to measure. One is, does your organization have some sort of guiding principles or values that you can take and blend into that? Right, you can incorporate that into the structure. Or if not, you can, a simple Google search, right? You can look at the, I think a good starting point would be, look at the agile principles and use those. You can use those verbatim, or you can craft them into something that makes more sense for you, right? So let's see, putting you guys on the spot, right? If you had to come up with a positive affirmation statement, right, that you would like to assess your team against, as an example here, it's very easy for those inside and outside the project to see what we're working on, transparency, et cetera, et cetera. What would you do? All right, so opening up the polls here, I'll give a little bit more time to this because you have to put a little bit more thought to it. So what type of positive affirmation statement, right? If you had to define what your definition of awesome looks like, right? Pick one aspect, be it culture or process, be it speed of release, be it teamwork, right? And come up with something. It's anonymous, so no judging. All right. Ooh, I trust my team members to support me. All right. As people are coming up with things, you'll notice another additional option to actually vote these up or down. So first, let's come up with some different options or categories, and I'm going to have you guys vote some of these up, or vote some of them down. It's like I can hear everyone Googling right now. All right. I feel like it's really a team effort. Our team culture cultivates individual and team support. I like that one. Just transparency. Bam. What else do we got? Have. We work at a sustainable pace. All right, we did go to the agile principles. Awesome. We deliver value continuously. All right, we're seeing some good ones up here. Yeah, actually, if you guys, if you're looking, I think Google just did a poll to their organization just to measure. I think it measures like team trustworthiness, and they limited to 4 different questions. One of those is around being able to rely and depend on their teammates. Something like it says something like I can trust and rely on my teammates when needed. So if you're looking for ideas as well, I would recommend you Google that, right? Something like Google team assessment, and you can see there are 4 questions. All right, I trust my team members to support me anymore. That seems to be the winner. Maybe another couple seconds. All right. Nothing on environment. Nothing on what about innovation? Innovation, experimentation. All right. I feel like it's really team effort, transparency. All right. Give it 20 more seconds before we go on. All right. So I like these, right? These are simple sort of guiding principles, right, that can measure the temperature of your team on a particular topic. We understand what the project vision is. All right. Right, or we know where the product is going. All right. So we'll go with the winner being I trust my team members to support me. All right, I'm going to copy this down really quick because we're going to use this. I'm going to use this to create a poll on the fly. So I trust my team members to support me. All right, awesome. So that's great. All right, we've designed a survey. We've came up with some awesome questions. We've pestered our team to fill it out. Now, what do we do with the results? All right. Option A, we can pass them out and tell them, all right, be on your merry way. Get out there and be somebody. You guys see how well or poorly you do. Option 2, we can skip right to, great, I've got a survey for this one team. Now, let me baseline my entire organization, right, off of this assessment. Or option 3, we can take that and we can dig a little further. All right, so exploring these results together. All right, and why would we want to do that again? So I mentioned some of these, but some of these I didn't really talk about. So gain a team's trust, right? Because there's a lot behind those statements. We don't know positively what people mean when they respond to a survey. It doesn't really matter how perfectly you design your questions. You won't really know without further exploration. It can neutralize our bias. Remember we talked about that fix it, feel it approach, right? What if I think this one burning thing is the worst thing that's happening with this team? But when I send out a self-assessment, right, when I ask the team, the results indicate otherwise, right? Then maybe the lesson to learn is on my end. And this is a really important one. It bolsters the likelihood that subsequent improvements will stick, right? Because you bring the team in with you on the journey. And it isn't you or someone else coming in, even from a coach's perspective. Right? I don't even do this, not anymore, like not now. Now that I've had a little bit more practice and some years of wisdom. I don't come in with a, hey, it's this way, right, or the highway, right? But right, we want to build that team together and drive them forward, right, together. We want to incorporate them into any type of corrective actions. And not that I didn't want to bash baselining, right, because definitely measuring one team's health is good, but having an indicator of how your overall organization is even better. But it does something really important before you do that, and it actually baselines that survey to see, are you really measuring the thing that you intended to measure? All right. So, all right, and I think, pardon me while I come out of this. Here's what I want to do. I want to take that question we just had, and I want to see what you guys think. All right, or that positive affirmation. So it was, I trust my team members to support me. I think true or true or false. True. False. Look about right. All right, back to presentation. Now with the poll that we just created. All right, it worked, great. Now, let's respond to that. How true is that statement for you? Right, true, more true than false. Mix. Going. Right, more false than true. Another couple seconds. All right, so that's, we're split. So this is a perfect reason why you don't just stop with the results, right? All this does is give you an indicator that you have something to look into. But I don't know why you've, even if everyone said all true, I don't know why they said that's true. Or why is it just more true than false, right? What's making that, even approach the false side? Or the few individuals that say that's more false than true. All right, so ignore that one. That was my test one. So here's what I'm going to give you guys. Right, the survey is kind of simple. Coming up with good questions on how to administer, maybe a little bit more difficult. But then the hard part is how do you walk your team through. And so I'm going to share with you a facilitator's guide that I've used many different times on various different teams to gain insight into true issues that a team is experiencing and actionable outcomes that something they can take away with. All right, so first, step one assumes you've created this poll, you've created this self-assessment SurveyMonkey, you've asked your team to participate, told them it was going to be anonymous, and then the results come in. What do you do? Right, so you're going to schedule a workshop or a session, and by the way, this is the same thing Spotify does. When you look at Spotify's health check game, they actually go through, they get their teams to actually respond during the workshop. But the point is it's still a guided workshop in that they respond and they talk about and they explore what's behind those responses. All right, so we share the entire results. And typically the survey that I use is, I think I've limited, had something like 15 or 17 different questions, which is probably a little bit on the long side, but took about an average of 8 minutes to finish. Smaller and shorter is better. So for me, what I did is, we explored the lowest scoring 2 to 3. But before I did that, by the way, and this is really important, don't skip over the good stuff, right? So the areas that the team was doing well in, we highlighted those. We even spent a minute or two talking about it. And then we went to what polled the lowest. right? And this is for assuming you've got a small team or a small group of folks. This is one approach for them. So write that statement out on the whiteboard, right? About 5 minutes. And then, right, go into a silent writing exercise from everyone. And this was a really cool thing, I thought, when it happened. And here you're going to ask everyone to write, why would this be true? And then why would it be false? And so this is very important because it does sort of two things. It neutralizes any perceived bias. It gets everyone to look at it from multiple different angles. And it gets everyone to see that other side, right? And this is about 5 minutes, right? Why is this true? Why is this false? And then have them post those up on the whiteboard, right? All the responses, and you can even ask them to group them together if you don't want to have that responsibility. And that's something the groups will people will actually naturally do if you don't usually have to ask. So they'll group those responses together and then look at the top 5 reasons behind why that's so, right? And this is probably the bulk of where to go from here. And you can do I like to do a 5 whys, but if you know another technique or are more comfortable with another technique, then definitely use that. And 5 whys is just as simple as that, asking why 5 times, or sometimes shorter, sometimes less, until you actually get to something that seems like a root cause, right? So, for example, if we were to say every team member's voice is heard when planning and sizing work, and that was false, right? And say the predominant group of answers might be, why is that? Because the lead architect or the architect doesn't normally participate, right? Then you would ask, why is that? Why does the architect not normally participate? Oh, maybe it's because he handles 4 or 5 different teams, right? Do you see where I'm getting at? And so this can really give you somewhere to hone in on. And if you have a lot of different reasons, I tend to ask the groups or the teams to dot vote on the ones that they want to explore if you can't explore them all. And then, boom, now we've got a reason, we've got something to do. Now we can opt in for action. As far as what that action is, I will momentarily pause because I'm going to give you a second technique for slightly larger teams. All right, so this is for, I've done this with teams about 5 or 6 or 7 people. For larger teams or larger groups, this method, we'll just call it Guide to Exploring for Large Groups, can be done quite possibly with 60 or 70, maybe even a whole agile release train, there's your safe terminology, right? A whole agile release train in there. All right, so a little bit different is that, we'll call it a typo. A little bit different is that for this aspect, there's a little bit more prep work that you're going to do, right? So before the session, this is right, you've already run the survey, you've gotten your results, you've looked at them. You'll pre-write the lowest polling statements or / questions, whatever you used, on a large flip chart piece of paper, those big flip chart papers. And then on one side, you can write true, and the other side, you write false, and you're going to place those at all the available, you'll need round tables, right? Where you can fit about 6 or 7 people at those. Place those place those at all the tables, and if you have more tables and more people than you do have statements, you'll just have to rewrite some of those statements. All right, and you want post-it notes and markers on each table. All right, now when the group comes in, team comes in, same thing as before. You share the entire results with the group. You highlight the highest and the lowest, about 5 minutes. But now the difference is you're going to introduce the statements at each table and have the members self-organize around the statements that they'd like to focus on. So this gets back to the team alliance, right? Which things do they really, really feel passionate about? So that'll take a few minutes, 2 minutes, maybe 5 or 10, depending on how large your group is. Same thing as before this time, right? Writing what's true or what's false about each one. But this time they post those responses directly onto the large flip chart piece of paper to one side. and then we do something called a World Cafe, right? And World Cafe, all it really is table rotation. All those members at the end of, oh, I didn't tell you how long that, yeah, so that usually is 5 minutes for that initial writing session. So that's about 5 minutes. Now, we'll do a table rotation or World Cafe right after that, and that they'll get up and they'll go to another station. Other folks will come in, and then now they'll either they'll add to what's already on that table, so they can add additional stickies, right? Or you can even use a plus minus question mark for things that are already written on the table that they agree with, or that maybe that they don't agree. So I tend to do this I tend to do this for 3 different rotations. So essentially every topic or every issue will have 3 different perspectives. So we get the original members to return to the table, right? Remember, this is the group that really cared about that, was really passionate about that statement. And then I will have them, that's 10 minutes. All right, oh, then we get to our opt-in for action. All right, number 6. All right, so great. We've come back to the table. We've got a whole list of things that can be done. What do we do? Right, so first, oh, I think I skipped one here. So the step that I meant to mention in here right after this is for a large table, they'll consolidate or synthesize the results, right? So they'll have, on that large flip chart, they'll have, hey, here are the fundamental issues that I think that make the statement true, and here are the fundamental things that make the statement false. But now, so what can be done, right? So this is any number of methods you can use. You can have the team themselves, right, that I recommend, come up with and discuss various different ways at moving the needle. So the question that I pose, and I would give you this as well, right? Assuming you're using a positive affirmation statement or agile affirmation statement, is what one thing do you think we could do that would move this response further to the right? Right. So if we were to re-baseline in another quarter and measure and do another self-assessment, what's one thing you think that'll help shift this to being more true? Right. So that's the question that I would recommend you use to pitch that back out to the team. Right. And then lastly, solicit a champion. Right. And this may feel kind of weird because maybe you are very, very passionate about this or many different things, but you're gonna have a higher chance for success to stick if you actually get someone else, if someone else feels motivated enough to champion that cause. Right? Does that make sense? And then I said remeasure in 1 month's time, but that's up to you. It depends on how large the team was and how exhausting your effort was. A month is good. I say a quarter. It's probably the longest you want to go measure. So let me share with you kind of what that actually looks like. So here's a couple of pictures from, this is Marissa, my co-facilitator, from this very session that we ran. We ran this one just yesterday. So you can see on the right we have the statements a couple of statements that we used that didn't score so high. We leave a buffer for innovation and experimentation, true, then there's the false, and then we take time to regularly inspect and actually adapt, true and false. And from those, this is the other big thing, from those we came out with 2 simple but solid plans of action. So the last other tidbits is you will probably see things that come out of this. Don't take on everything at once, right? Limit it to 1 or 2, right? Whether you dot vote or you can just use what people are most passionate about, right? Make sure that you, back to this one, right? Solicit a champion. That isn't just you, right? And then remeasure in 1 month's time, right? So now, once you've done that, now if you want a baseline, now you can recalibrate your survey. Say you weren't, after through honest conversation and discussion, you weren't measuring the things that you wanted to measure. So as a lesson here, by the way, when I did this question here, we take time to regularly inspect and actually adapt. What I was attempting to measure is how often does this team do something like a retrospective, but from the responses that I got, clearly they thought it was more of how often do we actually go back and look at our technical practices, or how often do we actually revise our architecture. So it was that what they were really talking about was more about the balance between building the right thing and building the thing right, which was a question in and of itself. So I had to go back and adapt this question to be more along the lines with what I was actually trying to measure. All right, so that's the do-it-yourself version. So really briefly, I'll share a few other tools that are out there that are more ready-made. So if you you look up Spotify Health Check, they have a similar framework, and it's a deck of cards, really. They do a health check game that measures different things like support, teamwork, pawns or players, mission, and theirs is a simple happy face, frowny face, or neutral face. And on those cards, for each one of those, it describes what would be a happy face. For example, fun, says something like, I enjoy coming to work and I look forward to working with my team every day, for the happy face. And sad face just says, boring. So the difference is how they administer this is designed to be a workshop where the team will come in, they'll put the cards all on the wall, they'll draw the faces, you can see that in the left picture, and then they'll actually have people dot vote. Just place a dot where they think for that particular area where they think that lands. And I think that's an awesome technique. It's definitely a lot less overhead than what I design, but I think that depends on your environment. There they have an environment of high trust, so people feel comfortable doing that. If you're in an environment where the trust is not so high, then you may want to use something that offers a bit of anonymity going in so that people can actually honestly respond before they come in. So that's definitely up to you. There's another really awesome, great tool by the Agile Uprising crew, Lean Agile Intelligence, which is a customizable framework that lets you essentially pick and choose not also what you want to measure, but how you want to measure it. You guys can go to, I think it's leanagileintelligence.com to find more about that. All right, so what did we cover? We talked about why you would want to design or engage and do a self-assessment. We talked about how to create one. We talked about how to explore one with your team, and then how to arrive at some course of action that will stick, and then what to do afterwards. All right. So if you're interested in learning more, this is just these type of techniques and practices are embedded into the Agile Team Facilitation course. This is a shameless plug that myself and another awesome coach, Jennifer Hinton, are launching on November 29th. I would highly recommend you take that. It goes into more detail about the facilitative journey, how to engage teams, how to de-escalate conflict, and how to just make your workplace and your team a more fun place to be. All right. That said, thank you for coming. I'm Jason Hall. This is our crew. And by the way, my Twitter handle is @JasonHallC. And now we can open up the lines for any questions, if there are.
Awesome, Jason. Thank you so much. We do have some questions. And before I get to those, I did also just want to say that some of these techniques obviously applicable in many different situations, but you can also look at them over time and kind of see how things change. And we do that a little bit here. We have a happiness survey that we do at most of our monthly meetings, and it's neat to see how those responses change over time, generally in a positive direction. So definitely take those into account too. All right, so let's jump right into the questions here. First thing in here, so you said this can be applied to more than just the team. How do I get leadership on board?
how do you get leadership on board, right? So I guess it depends on what angle or aspect that you're coming from. I would, for teams that I have not coached or that I was not, actually assigned to, right, you could try, I think you could posit from the angle of curiosity. Or you could say, hey, I'm thinking there's some issues there, but I'm not quite certain, and I really want to see um, what the team thinks. You could let them know, especially if you're doing the heavy lift in terms of creation, etc. Right, the investment is minimal, right, in terms of time it takes to fill a survey out, 5 or 6 minutes. Um, so at the team level, usually there's little resistance to doing that. Now, if you're talking about at the organizational level, I'd start at the team level first. Now, what you'll find out is once you do that, you can show those results right back to leadership and say, hey, here's what's coming up. And then you'll start to see probably more of a desire or curiosity about expanding that beyond just a particular team. Right? So one, the way that I've done it before is just from a point of, hey, first of all, hey, do you know how the team feels about this? Do you know what do you know what their level of engagement is like? And then two, right, once the survey results come back, I'd caution you, by the way, before you share the results, is to actually go through the exploration journey, right? Because if you don't do that, folks can tend to jump to confusion or jump to conclusions about why something is the way it is. Right? Yeah. So that's my advice for that.
Cool, thank you. Next question here. Do you have concerns with Dunning-Kruger effect on self-assessments?
Do I have concerns with the So for those of you that don't know, the Dunning-Kruger effect is essentially, it says that your knowledge, your level of experience in something sort of follows this bell curve parabola that starts off, the less that you know about something, the more likely you are to know that you don't know about something. But when people gain a little bit of knowledge, there's this in-between phase when they gain a little bit of knowledge about something, then they tend to overstate overstate their qualifications. And then on the sharp end, as people start to get more of an experience in a particular subject matter, they become more aware of the things that they know and the things that they don't know. So I take it you mean, am I concerned with that middle section? Am I concerned with people going out and saying, hey, I'm ready to take this on? Not so much, but only if you follow the, I don't want to call it a framework, but if you follow the neutral path of, well, let me see what people say. And I think it depends on what angle you're asking that from. If it's from the survey creator, then I think the whole point of the survey is so that you remove that bias. If it's from the participants and not necessarily knowing what something means, I think this goes back to making sure that you really try to create questions that are less around like practices. So you might get people who think, oh, we're doing daily stand-ups, I think we're agile, right? Nowhere in there do I say, or does the word agile even appear, right? There isn't a question in the whole survey that says we are agile, true, more true than false, et cetera, et cetera. So I think if you frame the statements and the questions that way, you're more likely to limit that Dunning-Kruger effect from coming out. And if that's not what you meant, please let me know what it is you actually did.
All right,
Is there
cool.
any?
Mhm.
Are there any others?
Yeah, we've got a couple more here. Let's see. Do you have recommendations on, say, a 10-question self-assessment to try first before we create our own, or would you suggest creating our own first? Not sure what the team's level of survey writing knowledge is.
Yeah, no, I would say if you were going to if you're not that experienced, I would just Google and I mean pull the agile principles or practices straight out of the um, straight out of the agile manifesto, and just say, all right, well, here are some values and practices that are worthy and what the agile practices stood up on. Let's just use those as opposed to kind of creating your own. Again, I would recommend if you Google the Google HR, it's like HR team survey. Theirs were only 4 questions, and those actually had less to do. Really didn't have anything to do with agile. It was just more about uh, team engagement and commitment and maturity. So I borrowed from that. You can use that. So you don't. I don't think there's enough kind of information and references out there where you don't really have to start. You don't have to go from scratch. Yeah. And then a totally different or opposite approach is you can, if you walk your team, right, if you don't do any of that, you can actually you can have your team create the basis of the questions by having I'd say a pre-retrospective on like what does their awesome look like. And so you actually get everyone from the team to name all the things that they think is amazing and great about a team, a quote unquote fictitious team, about, hey, if I was here, it doesn't even matter how much I get paid, I would love it, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can use that as the basis of your questionnaire. Yeah, so that's another approach.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that kind of answers what was going to be our next question here, which was how do I build the right kind of assessment question set for my team? So, do you have
Yeah.
anything
Oh,
else to
and
add?
I can even make it simpler. I'm happy to share it was like 15 or 16 that I've used. So I can share that with and we can post those on with the webinar presentation as well.
Awesome,
If
fantastic.
that
Definitely, definitely. Well, if you guys still have questions, please don't feel free to go ahead and submit those in to us. And if we don't get to them live, then we will certainly reach out to you separately. But I did just want to thank everybody for attending the webinar. We really hope that you enjoyed it and that you join us again. Our next live session is December 8th, and that'll be with Bob Payne again on managing dependencies with a portfolio alignment wall. So details on a registration link will be coming to you after we close here. And if you are interested in signing up for upcoming webinars and you don't want to wait around for our monthly webinar newsletter, then they're all available on the livespeed.com homepage. There's a link there that says Livespeed Webinar Series, and you can see all of the upcoming dates, our topics, see all the descriptions. And if you have a suggestion on something that you would like to see us cover, then we also have a link to our 2-question survey that you guys can just tell us what you want to see. If you want to help your teams be more agile and learn more about those facilitation techniques, Jason and Jennifer are going to be teaching the Agile Team Facilitation course November 29th. And the link directly to that registration is going to be coming to you guys afterwards. But if you need to know anything else, if you have any questions about it, what the day is going to be looking like, then feel free to reach out to both of us, and our contact information will be coming to you following our close here. In events land, we are already preparing for Lean Agile 2018. That's Lightspeed's little niche conference. It's a one-day affair. It's got 2 tracks of pretty cool content. And next year we'll be focusing on Agile engineering and DevOps. So you can check out this past year's highlights, which focused on Agile outside IT, at leanagiledc.com, and give us a shout at lsevents@lightspeed.com if you're interested in speaking or sponsoring for next year. If you're interested in digging a little deeper on any of the topics that we covered today, links to the recording here and both of our contact information is going to come to you shortly after we close. And as always, we will take a couple of minutes here just for any additional questions that you guys might have. So if you'd like to stay and chat with us, we'll be available. And if not, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Hey, Stephanie, can you hear me?
I can.